This is the Cubs-related podcast presented by CubsInsider.com. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. And folks, it's probably going to be one of those podcasts. We already had a few people reach out to us and say that they needed to hear from us after this series in Cincinnati. And Brendan, I guess this is just something that you and I have become known for on this podcast, that when the Cubs piss everybody off, people turn to us to try to make sense of it, or, I don't know, get a little catharsis on a Monday morning. Whatever you're joining us for, we're very happy to have you here on the Cubs-related podcast. But we are not happy, however, with the way that the Chicago Cubs are playing baseball. They dropped 2 of 3 to the Cincinnati Reds in Cincinnati this weekend, and Brendan, it has been a while since the Cubs won a series. And I was saying to you before we jumped on, I guess that's our punishment for relishing in that, what was it, 11-series stretch where the Cubs did not lose one. And we talked about how great that was and how amazing that was, and running through those series. And I made the joke that it was like Arya's kill list on Game of Thrones, that I could rile off the teams in order that the Cubs had beaten in those series. And it has been since that sweep of the St. Louis Cardinals at Wrigley Field back on June 7th through 9th since the Cubs won a series. A loss to the Rockies, the Dodgers, a split with the White Sox, a split with the New York Mets, vomit, right? A split with the Atlanta Braves, which is actually not bad, and this loss to the Cincinnati Reds. So, Brendan, I'm going to go out on a limb here. You and I only talked briefly before jumping on today. I'm going to guess you're not in a great mood.
No, I'm not happy. Sorry, I'm not happy. And I get the Cubs are still, right now as we talk, in first place. I get their 6 games over 500. I get they have Javi Baez, Contreras, Rizzo, and Bryant. I get it. That's why I'm kind of pissed off here. Other than that, a lot of what we've been told the past few months, production over talent, that's not being applied. Urgency on getaway day, that's not being applied. And I think at some point it is fair to talk about it in a not so happy sense. So there's a lot to get into. We're going to get into Descalso. I know it. But overall, Corey, my mindset is, I am pissed off. I'm sorry. I can be pissed off at the same time, be optimistic. But there's nothing recently in the last 3 weeks that inspires a lot of optimism. It does the opposite. It makes me really question what is going on here. What on earth are we witnessing? Because this is not the same type of play we saw in 2016, parts of 2017, parts of 2018. It's very unfamiliar to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that preface is a good one. You guys know here on the Cubs-related podcast, we love a good preface. And I say that, somewhat in jest, but it is true. Like, we as fans and, part-time analysts and, Brendan and I blog. I know a lot of you out there blog and have your own podcasts, etc. And I think as fans, we need to be allowed to evaluate things that we're seeing on a daily basis and even in short samples without necessarily indicting the operation as a whole or, throwing the season in the garbage or anything like that. Like, we can say the Cubs are not playing good baseball right now, and they haven't been for a little while here. They finished the month of June under 500 at 14-15. Yeah. And I think that we can talk about that and complain about that and lament that without necessarily that equaling us, saying, oh, the season's over, trade everybody, fire everybody, because I don't think that's what we're doing here. So, I think that that's just an important way to start this conversation by just saying, like, let's just take it for what it is. It doesn't have to be extrapolated out to anything larger, but they're not playing well. And actually,
this is the most upset that I've been at this performance. I think even more than last year. I think even more than that September stretch last year, which, by the way, they still went, 15-12? This is the most upset I've been since early 2017. So there's so many ways to go with this, Corey. It's just, I can't believe we're still talking about the same issues that we were talking about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, whatever it was. It's so infuriating.
Yeah, so here's how I want to do this. We're going to I think, get this out first. We're gonna, get our frustrations out first. Hopefully you can join us in that. Maybe you guys are on the same page. Then we will talk about, obviously, the Cole Hamels injury. That's big news. Kyle Hendricks returning to the rotation in this upcoming week. So a couple of big roster notes there. We will also talk about Jason Heyward, who is on absolute fire. I think no question playing the best baseball we have seen him play in a Chicago Cubs uniform. He is doing it all over the field, and in Cincinnati was on full display, making great catches. Nick Senzel must be the happiest man on earth to see Jason Heyward leaving Cincinnati, because they were showing that montage on the game today during the broadcast, and I mean, he has robbed him like in every single game of extra base hits and hits. He robbed him of a home run in Sunday's game, and he's in one of the best offensive stretches that we have seen from Jason Heyward. So we will talk about that, and anything else that comes up. But I'm not gonna recap these games. All right, they dropped 2 of 3. Y'all watch what happened. We don't need to run through it, okay? The big thing from the positive standpoint in this series is obviously the Javi Baez grand slam. Huge moment. Gives the Cubs distance in that game on Saturday. Helps them get a nice, easy win. That was a good game. Q was good in that game. 6 strong shutout innings. A good bounce-back start for him. So those are the positives, but you guys don't want to hear me recap how the Reds won 2 out of 3 games, so we're just going to skip it this time, okay? But, Brendan, here's where I want to start. And this is something that we talked about, and we've been over it, right? And I mean we've been over it in the sense that we've covered it, and we've been over it in the sense of we're done with it. But this is going to be that podcast. We're going to put this issue on blast. Yep. We're going to roast it.
Right now.
We're going to torch it.
Right now.
All right? This is it, okay?
This is it.
Brendan.
Yeah.
Brendan. I'm going to read you 2 offensive lines. I want you to tell me who you think each person is, okay? We're going to play a fun little game here, and I think you can tell by my tone that it's not fun at all. All right? You ready? You at home, write down your guess. See if you can get this one too, okay? Player A, I'm going to do batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, and WRC+. Remember, 100 is league average, below is worse, above is better. Okay, Brendan, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Player A, 190 batting average, 320 on-base percentage, 238 slugging percentage, and a 60 WRC+. That's player A. Player B has a 182 batting average, a 282 on-base percentage, a 266 slugging percentage, and a 50 WRC+. Brendan, who is player A and who is player B?
Well, one of them has to be a pitcher, right?
I'm going to let you decide.
I don't know. What, Descalso is batting 190? Is that who it is? I mean, yeah, I'll go with player A, Descalso, batting 190 with those terrible numbers. Player B, I don't know. John Lester. Even Lester has a better stat line, I feel like, than Descalso. So maybe it's not even John Lester. Who is it?
So you have the 2 players correct, but you made the incorrect decision to give Descalso the better line.
Is Descalso worse than Lester? Seriously?
He is. Isn't this a fun game? I told you guys it was going to be fun. You think I'm lying? So
he's worse than John
Lester has a 264 WOBA and a 60 WRC+. Daniel Descalso has a 249 WOBA and a 50 WRC+. Brendan, why is this man getting playing time on this team? What is going on?
I don't get it. He has a negative .7 WAR, Corey. That's unacceptable. In only 174 plate appearances, he does not even qualify to be in the bottom tier of the league because he's not even playing at a league qualified level. Every time he steps foot on the field, he hurts the team, Corey. Every single time.
Well, look, Brendan, that's laughable at this point. And we've said before, you don't have to take everything that Theo Epstein says in a press conference as gospel. We've certainly heard him give press conferences where, right away, okay, some of this is not necessarily 100% accurate, or he's, not giving us everything, right? Because he doesn't have to. But that's a joke. at this point. I don't ever want to hear that phrase again. Production over talent, my butt, Brendan. All right? You are twice in this week, you have given a start at second base to a sub-replacement level player. Brendan, that's what the stat is for. The whole point is that if you are below replacement level, the whole definition of the phrase is that it's a readily accessible player for any organization to just, get this, replace them with. What is going on? He's worse than John Lester. And, like, I love that stat, right? I love Johnny, love what he does at the plate. But he's a pitcher. Guys, like, that's, like, in good fun. Yeah. Like, that he's hitting well. We shouldn't have the starting baseman at second base putting up those numbers. This team has a $200 million plus payroll. They're in first place. They're one of the biggest franchises in sports. I don't want to hear about Descalso's 2-year contract, or this guy has options they need to protect, or they don't want this guy to get DFA'd, whatever. You are playing a sub-replacement level player. He's slow. He's bad on defense. He's doing nothing at the plate. He can take a walk. I'll give him that, right? But, guys, this has to stop. And I brought this up on the last podcast, but, like, you know, and we've gone through this whole issue, right? So we're not going to relitigate this every time. Like, y'all know where we stand on Addison Russell at this point in the world. But the difference between those two players is miles, man. Like, at least Russell is going to give you a really good glove at second base, and he's been hitting better, right? He's still below league average in terms of all these offensive numbers, and as I've said a million times, I don't think that's going to change. It hasn't changed in his first 4 years in the league. I don't think it's going to change now. But it's a non-decision, and I know on Sunday you want to give Javi a day off. Well, then you need to plan better so that Bodie and Russell are the ones covering the middle of the infield, or some other version of this. But Brendan, you can't be doing this anymore. It's done. It's over. It's a joke. You're not 10 games up in the division. You're up by a game in the division. The Pirates and Brewers, as we record this, it's 4:15 in Chicago. They're tied at 1. So if the Brewers lose, the Cubs stay in first place. If they win, then they're tied. Like, you're not, this isn't the summer of 2016. You're not 15 games in first place where you can, you know, say, well, we want to get Descalso going. We think he could be a good bench bat going forward, blah, blah, blah. You don't have that luxury, man. And we've said this before. Like, I'm not the one that was using the word urgency every 5 minutes all offseason. That was them. That was the front office. That was the manager. That was the organizational philosophy. And we're not seeing it.
See, the problem I have, too, is it's been exhausted. We're past the halfway mark. And what else does someone like a Robo Garcia have to do to get an opportunity, right? And I understand he has a 35% whiff or strikeout rate in AAA. I get that. The underlying peripherals, too, may suggest that strikeout rate is not as bad as it should be. He has a better swinging strike rate than Ian Happ, Corey. He's making more contact than Ian Happ, okay? That's not an indictment on Happ. It's a comparison. He's making the same amount of contact as Trent Giambrone, okay? I don't even know how to pronounce his last name. That's how I'm going with it. I'm pissed. He should get an opportunity, right? And what else are you waiting for with Descalso? He can only play second base. He's such a poor defender, or rather a lackluster defender, that he has the inability to play third base, to play shortstop. He's strictly a bad second baseman. And the Cubs are 6 games above 500. His performance today in Sunday's game cost John Lester a run. Couldn't get to the pop-up. Couldn't tag. Can't run. Poor to batted balls. It cost him a game. I'm sorry, it did. His performance when he's on the field hurts the Cubs dramatically, obviously. And if you're in a clubhouse, if you're playing on this team and you see someone like this keep getting opportunities, I'm pissed. Yeah. If I'm Ian Happ and I'm getting sent down 3 days before opening day to work on my stuff, that's fine. That's fine. But if you look up at the team ahead of you and you see Descalso doing this, I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off. And that's what it comes down to me is It's fine if you want to give guys opportunities early on. I was for the Carlos Gonzalez thing, the Descalso signing, didn't like it. Sorry, I didn't really like it that much. $3 million, didn't like it. But you can see the logic going there. Veteran hitter, had a decent year. Whether or not you want to extrapolate that and think that could continue this year, it hasn't. That was up to you at the time. But you can at least get behind the logic. We're in July now. In July. Only maybe tied going into Monday with the Brewers. Something has to give. That's where it comes down to. It's just enough is enough, Corey. If you're going to talk about that day, having that present mindset, being urgent, whatever you want to call it, what on earth is Descalso doing to inspire the optimism that he will change and produce not only today, but even in a week, in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks? You think Descalso is going to turn around in 2 months to be a productive contributor to this team? No way. There's no shot that happens. Give someone else an opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I'm with you. And again, like, this is just, you're in the division that you're in where we are in this season, you just don't have that luxury. Like you said, I'm all for this stuff at the beginning of the year. And I thought, like, it's weird because I thought they maybe went a little long with the cargo thing. But
at least they cut bait.
Right, who was they DFA'd over the weekend. We didn't mention that, but I'm sure you guys know that. But we're a little angry, so we're not necessarily covering all the housekeeping stuff, But that was fine. It was like, let's see what this guy has. Let's get him in there in some good matchups. If it works, great. If not, they cut bait like they did, right? It's low risk, high reward, and it didn't work. They moved on. It's fine. But, like, we're getting near July here. Like, you're going to head to the point where you're playing a lot of very tight, important baseball. And the way that Major League Baseball has scheduled these games now, like, a lot of the division games are staggered at the end of the year. And you just have these stretches coming up where it's not going to be easy, right? Like, you're not looking at and we've gone through easy stretches recently, and the Cubs didn't play that well. So you just don't have that luxury to have that attitude with so many different things. Like, well, we want to get this guy going, or we want this guy to get going because we think he's going to play a role going forward. Like, you don't have time for that. This team needs to have their best players on the field every day. I said this in the last episode, and I'm going to say it again. They're not doing that. This is not the best 25-man roster that the Chicago Cubs can be putting out. And I am not by any means saying that, someone like Robel Garcia is assuredly the answer, and, like, it's a no-brainer that's going to work and whatever. But like you just said, Brendan, Descalso, give somebody who might do better an opportunity. Descalso had one good year in his career, and it was last year, and he is not repeating any of those metrics, none of those peripherals, batted ball data, exit velo, launch angle, barrel rate, none of that is repeating itself. He's not that person, right? It didn't work, but you in July, as we're like a couple days away here, like, you cannot be giving starts to sub-replacement level players. I can't believe that that's something I have to say, Like, I went and looked, the Orioles start one person with an OPS worse than Daniel Descalso, and it's Chris Davis, like someone they gave a monster contract to who is just plummeting, right? Which is a totally different situation. They're a terrible team, right? Like, you're looking at this going like, yeah, this is something the Orioles do, because who cares? This is not something that the Cubs should be doing in a division where they're up a game or tied or whatever it's going to be come Monday morning. This has to stop. And I think that's really all there is to say on this, but it has to stop.
And I think like you're saying, Garcia may not be the answer, and I'm not saying he even is the answer. I have questions about his performance, just like most do, but we're 4 weeks away from the trade deadline, and right now they're going to have to make a deal. You can't be trotting out these guys 6 through 9 on a daily basis right now with any type of reliability. When Javi sits, Corey, the lineup 5 through 9 is unprojectable. It's just not projectable. like David Bodie, hope he gets more chances, but to rely on David Bodie may not be the right course of action. I love Bodie. I've always said that. With Russell, you have zero idea what you will get offensively from Russell. Almora, same thing, zero idea. Something has to give, and to get to the point where you can make sound solutions or try to address these issues, I think we may be past that point. I would be floored if Garcia does not get an opportunity before the All-Star break.
We heard all offseason about urgency and production over talent. It's time to see it. Okay?
Yep.
It's time to see it. This is ridiculous. Okay?
Yep.
And we're going to end it there with this Descalso rant. But I don't want to...
Hopefully the last time we ever talk about
I don't want to
this
see this guy starting
podcast
anymore. It's a joke, man. It's offensive to all of us that spend our time watching these games and who listen and take the words of this front office, especially Theo, to heart, and who pay attention to this team on a daily basis. It's insulting, frankly, that they preach all these things and they're just running this guy out there while he's literally below replacement level and hitting worse than one of our pitchers who, you know, not to like jab at John, right? But we're comparing him to a pitcher who went the first 60 at-bats of his career without a hit. Like, come on. Like, this is a joke. Like, this should not be a conversation that we're having. Brendan literally got fooled into thinking that Descalso had the better line than John Lester. Like, come on, guys. Urgency. Like, is that a joke? Were they being sarcastic? Like, I'm just not really sure what to even make of this at this point, but it's got to stop.
Again, if I'm a player on the Cubs, too, and I said this, I don't know even if I even said this on air at some point, but I did not like the tone of Theo's end of season press conference in 2018. And loved Theo. The front office, they were revolutionary in 2012, 2013. Really, I think they kind of changed the paradigm thinking of front offices drastically. What I don't like, though, with Theo in that particular instance was, if I'm a player for the Cubs, I don't want my boss to say those things a day after we lost. I don't think an exit interview for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it was, before you get on the mic is enough to grasp the level of seriousness that loss was. So I did not like that. And again, it's fine if you have those ideas where production over talent, you want to say that to the media, go for it. That's fine. But as a player, I'm not happy about that. And when I see other teammates not getting opportunities because someone does not deserve it, I'm pissed off. Again, if I'm David Bodie, I am pissed the heck off that I'm losing at-bats to Daniel Descalso, Corey. That is not settle well with me. And it does, I think, provide some type of distrust between management and players. Who knows, right? We're outsiders looking in. My feelings are, if the front office and your boss is going to put the team on blast, Theo did. He put the team on blast. I don't care if he talked to the other players and they knew about it. He publicly went to the media, said this team was broken. And partially that was his responsibility, as he said. If I'm Rizzo, that does not sit well with me.
Yeah, again, so I think that's where we'll leave that. And I want to go back to the way we preface this conversation by saying that part of the reason that Brendan and I think a lot of you, I mean, looking at, I follow a lot of you guys that listen to us. If you tweet at me and ever like mention the pod, I usually follow right back. I very much appreciate you guys listening to the pod and interacting with us. So I do see a lot of like what you guys are thinking and saying. And it seems like almost all of you are with us on this. And the reason that we get so heated about this is because this team is better than this. Like a team that has Rizzo, Bryant, Javi, Wilson, and especially now, and we'll transition to this here, like with the way Heyward is playing, like this team should be better than this. You go out and you get Kimbrel to inject that life into this bullpen, and this bullpen has been so much better over the last stretch of baseball, and you see the immediate impact of pushing everybody down and having Kimbrel in there and what it can do to the roles for these guys. This team should be better than this. This team should not be having sub 500 months of baseball and 3-week stretches where they don't win a freaking series. Like and
it seems preventable. Those are preventable losses, which is the most infuriating aspect of the stretch.
Is that you just don't get the sense that right now, and for really a large part of this season, it goes back to the way that they addressed the bullpen and why everybody was so up in arms with the bullpen going into the season. You just don't feel like they have been putting their best foot forward at every opportunity. And again, early in the year, that's fine, right? You have a big roster, you've got a big payroll, and it's fine to say, you know what, we want to try some of these guys in the bullpen. We're going to try this like ragtag group, and if it doesn't work, we're going to address it quickly, which they did, right? They sent Edwards down after the first 3 series of the year. They're making moves the entire year now. Like, they've been aggressive on that front. But in other areas, it just doesn't feel like that same, to go back to the word of the, Pee-wee's word of the day, right? Like urgency. You just don't feel it. And, again, we are seeing some of the same issues plague this team that we have heard and seen them talk about, wanting to address and wanting to be better at. And, it's one of those things like the runners in scoring position issue, Brendan. And we've gone over before, right, that a team like the Cubs that gets on base at a good clip, has a lot of guys that take walks, they're going to have more opportunities with runners in scoring position than teams that don't hit at all, right? But the numbers for some of these guys just aren't good. There's no way to sugarcoat that. And when you look at like the batted ball information from a lot of these guys, it's not good. We went over, I think it was in one of the most recent episodes, that the Cubs are near the top of the league. I think somewhere in this series, Len Casper on the broadcast mentioned that the Cubs were second in the league with ground ball rate, right? Like, y'all are watching what's going on in baseball right now. Everybody's hitting home runs at record-setting clips. Does it seem like a good time to be putting the ball on the ground more, especially with like the way teams are shifting and the ball is flying out of these stadiums? Like, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I don't think so, Brendan. So it's just been a frustrating stretch, and like we said, like there's just too much talent within this 25-man roster, and especially this position player group. It shouldn't be like this. That's like the easiest way for me to say that. Like, when you have a top 5 or top 6 performing the way they are, like, you just shouldn't be having these conversations, and it just gets very frustrating to see the results over such a long stretch of time.
Yeah. So I went to go back, and I use expected weighted on base average to capture launch angle, to capture exit velocity, the location at which they hit the ball, everything, right? Into a predictive type stat. So that's why I'm using the expected weighted on base average here. No one, Corey, on this roster since the start of 2018 has an expected weighted on base average over 345. That's it. No one. The list, and I hate doing this too, because it's always very easy to misinterpret this as indicting this team. I'm not. But these are facts. This is how it is, and we got to talk about why this is happening. Chris Bryant, 325 expected weighted on base average with runners in scoring position. That's not good. Schwarber, 305. Not good. Contreras, 288. Not good. Can't happen. Rizzo, 337. That can't happen either. Baez, 342. He's your cleanup hitter. Love Javi. A lot of clutch moments this year. That's not good enough. The only player above 345 that's not even a starter full time is David Bodie. Unsurprisingly, David Bodie, 373 expected weighted on base average, 123 chances with runners in scoring position. The rest have at least 200 or around 200. What is going on here? These guys, their overall numbers are insane. Rizzo, year in, year out, one of the best first basemen offensively. Chris Bryant, one of the top hitters in the league every single year. Javi Baez, second to MVP voting. This year, we'll be right back up there. Contreras, top 10 weighted on base average hitter this year. So how do we get to this point where the sample is large, right? This is almost a year and a half worth of data now. And it's matching what we're seeing. It's matching the questions these guys are being asked. Madden's frustrated about it. He was frustrated about it after talking about it the last series. He has no explanation. The Cubs have been through 3 hitting coaches in 3 seasons to try to fix this. Joe Madden hired or nudged or was a significant aspect of hiring Chili Davis. Did not work. So what is going on here where you have hitters who are among the best in the league? I've never seen talent like Javi Baez at shortstop. Chris Bryant's a multi-positional talented player. Tons of power. But for some reason, when there's guys on second base or third base, they don't perform similarly when they're off base. And that's usually the opposite. Usually guys' offensive numbers, they improve when there's runners on base. The pitcher typically doesn't do as well out of the stretch. What on earth, Corey, is going on? Why is it like this? Seriously, what do you think the issue is?
I'm not sure, man. Honestly, it's a little
weird. Those are bad numbers.
Like I said,
I'm sorry, those are bad numbers.
I'm not really sure because I just think like the big hitters on this team are really good and put up really good numbers overall. And, you know, like we were just reading, like Wilson Contreras has been one of the best hitters in the league so far this year from not just as like a catcher of anybody. And why those numbers don't translate to runners in scoring position and why they find themselves struggling with this issue every year, I really don't know. And it's one of those things where like they've clearly had an eye on it, right? They've been moving hitting coaches. They've tried a bunch of different approaches. And we've seen a lot of these guys individually make really significant adjustments throughout their time with the Chicago Cubs. You and I in particular have cataloged a lot of them with video and some of the articles at CubsInsider.com. So I don't know. Man, I really don't know. This is where like I kind of just have to look at the numbers. Like you guys know I didn't play baseball, so like I can't like get into the mind of the hitters here and try to like think about what's different in the approach with runners in scoring position or whatever. But it's it's one of those things where it's rather annoying that this is an issue that keeps persisting. And
it was one of the hallmarks of spring training.
Right.
When we had Jordan Bashton, CubsMLB.com beat writer, come on the podcast in spring training, he was really emphasizing what Joe Maddon was doing, where they called situational hitting opportunity hitting. And they go out there, and Maddon is 30 feet away from the hitters. He has one of those machined where you just drop the ball in and it goes right to the home plate. Small baseballs, it simulates 90-mile-per-hour heat, and Joe Maddon calls out situations, and the hitter have to react accordingly. They put so much emphasis on this. You're still not seeing the results. And again, they've tried it, like you just said. They've tried it with 3 different hitting coaches. What is going on here? Is it a coaching staff issue? Is it just the nature of these guys as hitters? Is it poor development going through the system? I don't have an answer for that. And even at times in 2016, they still did that. I think we can look at the playoff when they won the World Series, if I need to remind you. But there were still times when the inconsistencies were so obvious, and I don't understand why. And even reading Javi Baez's numbers, I'm floored that his run production or his batted ball portfolio is a little bit above league average with runners in scoring position. I am floored with that because it doesn't match kind of what you expect or what you see. And so that's where it comes down to my frustration. Ultimately, I think even more than Descalso is just they're not maximizing these guys' talent. And whether that's a coaching issue, a player issue, who knows, right? We don't know the answers to that. But I do think deep down, and I only played high school baseball, right? So I'm not at that level. But deep down, I think when you get outside of your normal plate approach and you stress something so much differently than when you have guys off base, it gets you out of your overall zone, and it makes you someone who you're not. Most of these guys get plate appearances with men off base, and that's their approach. And when the coaching staff, the front office, they try to implement something that is noticeably different, opportunity hitting is a philosophical shift from the norm, from with guys off base. That's a shift. That's not working. So I do think maybe there's too much emphasis on trying to do something different with men on base. Maybe that's not the right approach because it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked for not 1 year with this news change. It hasn't worked for 3 years with 3 different hitting coaches. at some point you have to recognize what they're doing is just not productive. And maybe they just need to get away from that high emphasis of situational hitting and just let these guys be who they are.
I'm not really sure how to solve that, but I do want to transition to someone who is doing really well and who deserves the praise, and that is Jason Heyward, who put on an absolute clinic this weekend in Cincinnati. It's a shame that the team as a whole doesn't pay that off, which is really cruel in a way, right, Brendan? Like, when you look back with, how often we've litigated Jason Heyward's swing and his overall production, right? Like, now he's on this, like, epic tear over the last, like, month or so especially, and the rest of the team is, not making it live up to anything. He hits 2 homers in the game on Sunday. He robs a home run, and it's not enough. So there's some sort of, like, cruel irony there. That's really not funny. But I want to read, and this was prior to some of the games this weekend, but even just coming in to Saturday's game, this one from Brett at Bleacher Nation, and he tweeted out, coming in to Saturday's game over the last month, Heyward was slashing 330, 374, 550 with a 138 WRC plus. And his overall numbers on the season now, after this series in Cincinnati, he's got 14 home runs, which is a Cubs career high for Heyward. So every homer he hits now is just going to keep increasing that total. He's got 37 runs batted in, a 271 batting average, 362 on base percentage, 473 slugging, which is good for a 350 WOBA and a 116 WRC plus. When you combine that with his base running and the defense that he plays, especially in right field, he's one of the best in the game in right field. It takes a bit of a dip, which is kind of weird in center field, but that's a discussion for a different day. He's one of the best in right field, no questions asked, right? Like, he is a super valuable player, even if he's, like, close to league average. When he's hitting like this, though, this is the player that the Cubs envisioned in the first place when they signed him. And we've said this before, but it bears repeating that you really cannot give this guy enough credit for making these adjustments and sticking with this process, right? We've covered every time he's one of, if not the earliest player that shows up in Mesa to get those extra hacks in the offseason, to start that program, to make the adjustments on his swing. He's one of the first guys that shows up in camp to do that work with the hitting coaches and the rest of the staff. He could have very easily put his head down, collected his money, and just said, you know what, the status quo is fine. And he has done anything but that. He continues to work. He continues to have, I think, one of the best attitudes on the team about anything. Anytime they ever talk to him, he's positive, he's confident, he is always trying to get better. And so it's all just to say that this stretch where he's just on fire, and this season as a whole, like I said, he's got the most home runs he's hit as a Chicago Cub going forward here. It couldn't happen to someone that deserves it more. He has done nothing but put the work in and try to get better from where he started his Cubs career, and those results are paying off, Brendan.
And Heyward's got to a point now where he is a significant part of this team's infrastructure, where the Cubs now, they need Heyward to produce. Like, they could get away with it in 2016, 2017, 2018, because they had Ben Zobrist. They had the positional flexibility to move guys around. They don't have that right now. The depth is not there. And now Heyward, when the Cubs have to solely rely on him to play almost every day, he's performing, and he should be applauded for that.
That goes back to, I think, the overall frustration that we were expressing in the beginning. Like, you've got Schwarber playing really well. He hits an opposite field home run for his 18th of the year on Sunday. Chris Bryant is Chris Bryant. Rizzo's Rizzo. Baez, Contreras. And now you've got Heyward performing like this. Like, the team should be playing better, right? And I think that's where that frustration really comes in, is that you feel like those guys in particular are being a bit shortchanged by the rest of the position players, and that lineup not feeling a little lengthier. And you just really wish that when you were getting seasons like this from those top guys in particular, that it was leading to kind of what we were hoping for coming into this season, where we were getting back to, like Jed Hoyer talked about last year, that relentless offense that we've seen from this Cubs group at times, where you know that these pitchers go out there and they just dread facing this group. And it's kind of been a lot of the opposite this year. Like, how many times, Brendan, have we seen a guy come into, and this was another one where, like, you're listening to the broadcast and they're going, yeah, Descalso has had some up and down results. He's struggled against these guys. And, you know, he's through, 6 innings, and the Cubs have done nothing today on Sunday. And it's like, how many times has that happened? And it just gets old at a certain point.
I wonder if that's like an intentional plate approach change too, because I mean, the first inning they got through the first 3 hitters and 6 pitches, and they're trying to jump on those first 2 pitches. It seems like that's not working either. I don't know what the issue is.
It really all goes back to the way we kind of prefaced that Daniel Descalso discussion, where it's just like, that's why we're so frustrated, and that's why we are kind of like putting this stuff, like we're burning it at the stake, so to speak, like, because this team should be better than this. We believe in this team, and to a degree where it's just like they should not be under 500 in the month of June. They should not lose 3 series and be 3-6 on the season to the Cincinnati Reds. Like, they're just better than this. They should be better than this. They have the payroll, they put in the work, and they have a lot of pieces on this roster that should just be better than this. And it's frustrating when that's not the result that you're getting. So anyway, let's transition to the roster news. Again, Cole Hamels hits the injured list with an oblique injury, and Kyle Hendricks coming back on Tuesday. So it's kind of you get a little bit of good, a little bit of bad. And my initial reaction, Brendan, to the Hamels thing is obviously that sucks. There's no real way to spin that one in a positive. And I've been kind of looking at this in 2 different ways, right? Where it's like the first way is Cole Hamels has been unbelievable since he's been with the Chicago Cubs. He's been one of the best pitchers in certainly the National League, if not all of baseball. Since he's had a Cubs uniform on, his numbers at Wrigley Field are eye-popping. His numbers against the Cardinals have been even more eye-popping. He's just been really, really good for the Chicago Cubs. So the first way I've been looking at this is you're losing a guy who's basically been your best pitcher for almost a calendar year now, right? We're like, a month away from when they acquired him-ish last in the 2018 season. So like almost a calendar year. Like, this guy's been your best pitcher. And Hendricks has certainly gone through stretches where he would be in that conversation, but it's been Cole Hamels. So that's not easy to replicate, right? Like, you're kind of asking one of these guys to replicate production that they have not been doing. And so that stinks, right? There's no good way to spin that, and you just hope that it's not as significant of an injury and that Hamels is able to come back down the stretch and be as good for this team. The other side of that coin, though, is that the Cubs are, like, this isn't a death blow or like a nuclear situation for this team, right? They are better equipped, I think, than most to have a starting pitcher go out. And I'm not over here like clamoring like, yes, like Chatwood gets to start more, or Montgomery gets to start more. Like, no, but you do already have guys on this roster who are stretched out, who have experience starting, and who have given you good starts at times, right? It's certainly been up and down with both Chatwood and Montgomery to different degrees. Alzolai's up. He's going to get another go on Monday, and, maybe he sticks around. So it's all just to say, like, it really stinks because Hamels has been your best pitcher, and that is not easy to replicate that production. But also, especially with Hendricks coming back and that injury not being as serious as, maybe we feared, like, when it first happened. He's back before the All-Star break, so, like, everything progressed on that really nicely. The Cubs are in a decent position to at least, deal with it, right? Like, I think other teams, right, if something like this happens, it's a way bigger deal, and they're maybe in a position where they're just searching for, like, able-bodied human beings to take these starts, right? And the Cubs are not in that position. Like, again, I'm not, like, if it's Chatwood or Montgomery, whatever, like, I'm not I'm not going to be looking forward to those starts. Let's put it that way. But
they're capable.
They're capable, right? Like they're prepared
capable
for this in so much as you can be.
Bringing back Hamels, $20 million, good deal. And even in AAA this year, someone like Colin Ray, for example, pretty good. 28 years old. He has a 3.27 ERA. He could be a guy up. We, of course, have Adbert Alzolay, who's going to replace Hendricks, or rather Hamels, I guess, in the short term. And then you have Chatwood and Montgomery as additional potential depth pieces. So the Cubs, at the very least, they have that starting pitching depth. And I know with the age of the rotation, that was a necessity to create. And they did create that depth. So that is something to be happy about. With Hamels, you hope there is some optimism based on what he said after that injury, where he said the severity of the oblique injury compared to the one he had in 2017, which was on his opposite side of the one he currently has now. He doesn't believe it to be as serious, and he was out for 2 months in 2017 with that oblique strain. So until we get that MRI result back, it's hard to expect when he'll be back. But if you take his words at full face value, maybe you're looking at 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it ends up being. And the Cubs are more than capable of filling those starts. And they may not be to the level that Hamels has performed, but you can at least hope for borderline league average. And with the way the other guys in the rotation have been performing, with Hendricks coming back, with Lester, which I thought he looked decent even in that last game against the Reds, with Darvish, he's had a pretty good last 8 or so starts. The full sample, use my words cautiously there. You at least expect something to be, league average at worst, maybe, with this rotation, with Hamels out. And that's something I think to be optimistic about, because the Cubs, if anyone else does go down, God forbid, at least right now they have the depth to pick everyone up and to continue that type of quality starting pitching we've seen the entire year.
Yeah, and hopefully, it sort of works out almost like it did last year, right? Where you're down the stretch and you inject veteran, really good Cole Hamels back into this rotation. So,
yeah, but I don't think he'll be back. Who knows, right? But if he's back at the earliest in September, I would be pretty surprised.
For part
it's
of it,
possible. Yeah, it's possible. But I think 6 to 8 weeks, you get more of Alzolay. I guess that's a silver lining. They should be fine.
Yeah, so before we preview this upcoming series here, the only other thing I wanted to touch on, and we don't have to delve into this too much because, really with the way the series ends up, it's hard to feel as passionate about it, but I do just want to declare something on this podcast, and that is, I know that the expression and the hashtag and everything is Puig your friend. Well, I want to go on record here. Not your friend of the Cubs-related podcast, okay?
No,
officially,
no.
Yasiel Puig is not a friend of the Cubs-related podcast.
What an embarrassing act that was.
You come, we just talked about this with Tyler Flowers, so I don't think I have to remind you guys that we're going to defend our boys here. But this is different. I love Wilson Contreras. I love him to death. But y'all know that Pedro Strop is the friend of this podcast. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
So you come for the king, all right? We're going to defend him, and we are going to be angry about it. That's really all I have to say on the matter. Don't act like a clown in the batter's box if you don't want the pitcher to deal with it. I'm never an advocate for throwing at people, and I kind of would have preferred Strop not done it, but he didn't start it.
This is Major League Baseball. These are how these guys operate.
He didn't start it. So Puig is, being demonstrative, stepping out of the batter's box.
That's the most embarrassing display from a hitter I've ever seen at the level. To literally complain about the pitches you're receiving and then just sit there the very next pitch. That's embarrassing. If I'm a teammate of Puig, I'm in your face. What is that? That is unacceptable.
Yeah. So I don't love throwing at guys. I think you guys know that. That's not my preferred course of action. But Strop didn't start anything. So, and like I said, you come for the king, we're going to defend him. You don't come for Pedro Strop. That is a full stop. All right. Hats to the left. I'll take a bullet for you, Pedro. Okay. Don't come for Pedro Strop. or we're going to be right there defending him. That's the end of the discussion, really. Like, don't come at Pedro Strop ever. Okay?
Yep. That is the official stance of the Cubs-related podcast, is Puig is indeed, as Strop said, he's stupid. It is. Everyone knows it. Like Strop said, he's stupid. All right, so let's preview this upcoming series in Pittsburgh. A 4-game set in Pittsburgh starting Monday night. You can get tickets to this series through SeatGeek with millions of live event tickets and a price match guarantee. SeatGeek proves there's a better way. They built the fastest way to find tickets, so you can stop searching for the perfect seat and just start enjoying it. Why is SeatGeek better than the rest? A quick look at the App Store shows over 50,000 5-star reviews. How's that for customer satisfaction? SeatGeek breaks down the details. Green dots mean good deals. Red dots are overpriced deals on their very easy-to-use interactive seat map. And every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets with confidence. You guys know I always use SeatGeek on my phone. I get all my baseball tickets through them. The Cubs will be going to San Diego in about 2 months. I already bought tickets to that series through SeatGeek. It took me 5 minutes. My dad's going to travel out there and meet me there. I bought tickets for my family, friends. So easy to use. And I know I'm getting the best price no matter what. SeatGeek will even give you guys, our listeners, $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All you need to do is use our promo code, download the SeatGeek app today, and use promo code CUBSRELATED for $10 off your first purchase. That's promo code CUBSRELATED for $10 off your first purchase. Okay. Adbert Alzolay gets to start the first of the 4-game set. Who's 1-0 with a 2.08 ERA. He'll be facing Trevor Williams for the Pirates, who's 2-2 with a 4.25 ERA. That game starts at 6:05 p.m. Central. And then on Tuesday, the Pirates have not announced their complete rotation. So after Monday, they're still dealing with things, but the Cubs have announced their rotation, so I'll just name those guys. Kyle Hendricks, 7-5 with a 3.36 ERA. That game starts again at 6:05 p.m. Central. On Wednesday, Yu Darvish on the mound for the Cubs, 2-4 with a 4.98 ERA. Same start time, 6:05 p.m. And then on Thursday, Q will finish off the series. He's 5-7 with a 4.21 ERA. That game starts a little bit earlier, 3:05 p.m. Central. And then just to give the complete picture, the Cubs will go back to Wrigley, or rather Chicago. After that series, they get Friday off, and they play the White Sox for a 2-game set at their ballpark. They're calling it Guaranteed Rate Field now. I always call it the Cell for whatever reason, just how I grew up. And that's where the Cubs are. So currently, they're 6 games above 500. They're 45-39. They're half a game up as far as we know. And the rest of the entire Central, as it stands now, the Cardinals are 3.5 games back of the Cubs. The Pirates, 4.5 games back. Of course, these guys are still playing. And the Reds, with their win over the Cubs in that last game, they are 5.5 games back. The complete National League picture right now, the Braves are 50-34. The Dodgers, not slowing down, 56-29. So the Cubs have lost ground in the complete National League picture, but at the very least, despite their underperformance, still in first place, waking up Monday morning, things could be worse, and if there's any optimism, it's those standings right now, Corey.
So let me remove that optimism for you, Brendan, because as we were recording this, the Brewers did win Sunday's game.
All right.
So we are tied
in first place
atop the NL Central, the Brewers and Cubs, now with identical records. So
lovely.
That is where things are at. And again, like, as we're wrapping up here, I just want to reiterate that is, like, kind of in a nutshell, where that kind of angst comes from. This team is still in first place. They're over 500. We're obviously in the best stretch of Cubs baseball that certainly Brendan or I have seen in our lives, right? And that's not lost on us. But I think it's fair to look at the way that they have been playing, certainly over the last few weeks here, and say that it hasn't been good. I think that there are just certainly times where only focusing on positives and acting like everything is great is not really that productive. And so I hope that you guys, understand that and don't take a lot of the criticisms as necessarily indicting this season as a whole or our hopes for this season. I think it was one episode or 2 episodes ago, I said they're going to win the division. You can quote me on that, and I'm not changing that. So I believe in this team. I believe that this front office is going to make changes as we go towards the trade deadline here, and that this team is going to have a chance to compete for the playoffs and ultimately for a World Series. I genuinely believe that. But I think that there are just times where you can't sugarcoat stuff. It's fair to say they have not played good baseball over the last few weeks here, and I don't think it has to mean any more than that. I hope that kind of lands the way that we hope it does. And it's pretty simple going forward here, like to the All-Star break. You got to play better baseball, man. That's really what it is. Even Joe has talked about some of the sloppiness with this team, the lack of clutch hitting, etc. And it's just got to be better than this, man. Like they are a better group than the way that they have played. They, have held themselves to a higher standard. We hold them to a higher standard. And again, I believe we'll get there in the long run, but it's fair to call them out on it, in the short term. So as we go forward here, let's have a good stretch before the All-Star break, rest a little bit, and, kind of reevaluate things as we head towards that trade deadline and, see what they ultimately want to do to make adjustments to this team.
Yeah, and it's a delicate balance. Like you nailed it right there, right? There's still optimism. You and I, you can quote us. This team should win the division. And the fact that they're still in the position where they are in first place, again, given these disturbances, we're fortunate. But they got to clean it up. I mean, even in the Red Series, Schwarber misplayed a ball. Descalso can't get to a ball. Contreras, wild pitches, miscues all around. This is not the same team that we saw the past several years. They never made these errors. They never made these mental gaffes. And on the base paths, same thing there. So before the All-Star break hits, you just want to see them clean it up. At the very least, clean it up. You can still have these situational hitting problems, but if you play tight defense, good base running, those are not as magnified as they are right now. So that's my priority for watching this team, is just play cleaner. Play like you have the past 3 years on the base paths and defensively. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is a tight division, so you're going to have to, put up or shut up at some point, because you can't just be relying on looking at the scoreboard and hoping that everybody loses, even though that's worked for a little while here. So, yeah, let's just see some better baseball. But that's about all we have for you. It'll be nice to see Kyle Hendricks back on that mound on Tuesday. Obviously, that's a good thing. And, now that we're kind of through that little scare with him, so that'll certainly be uplifting come Tuesday. And we will be back with you guys when the Cubs finish up this series. And guys, I'm telling you, if we have to go through this Descalso thing again,
I swear to God,
I don't know. There might be screaming on the next podcast. You guys might have to take your earbuds out for that one. I don't know.
Explicit content there.
It really might, Brendan. I mean, if we have to deal with this again, we're going to drop some F-bombs. I'm telling you. Anyway, that's all we have for you. We will talk to you guys soon. Thank you guys very much for listening and indulging us as we vent. Hopefully it's helpful or cathartic or something, right? But we appreciate your listenership and your participation and your support. And as always, go Cubs.